Well, good evening. I am Brennan Barnard. I'm the Director of College Counseling at the Derryfield School in Manchester, New Hampshire. And I'm also the College Admission Program Advisor for the Making Caring Common project at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. And this is Thursday Night Live, straight talk with college admission leaders. And we have some amazing leaders with us here tonight. We are grateful for our friends at Grown and Falone for partnering with us on this, and we're thrilled to be streaming live on their Facebook feed. Would love it if people would kind of throw on in the comments where you're coming in from, and around the country and around the world. And you can, if you're on the Zoom platform, you can use the chat if you want. Folks over at Grown and Falone are monitoring the Facebook feed and sending us questions, so you can use that as well. So thank you all again for being here. I want to introduce our amazing panelists here. And I'll begin with JT Duck. JT is the Dean of Admissions at Tufts University, and he has served as the Dean of Admission at Tufts since 2019. And over the last 20 years, JT has held senior admissions positions at Haverford College, Brandeis University, MIT, and Swarthmore College. He also served as the Director of College Counseling in my role at Boston University Academy. And he's the first generation to college in his family. Dr. Zina Evans is the Vice President for Enrollment Management and the Associate Provost at the University of Florida. And Dr. Evans has over 20 years experience in higher education and has worked at such institutions as UC Berkeley, UC Irvine, UC Santa Barbara, and the University of Maryland. In addition, she has held the position of Director of Research for the National Association of College Admission Counseling, NACAC, where she managed research activities focused on admissions, enrollment management, and financial aid for public and private institutions. Dr. Evans also held the position of Affiliate Assistant Professor at the University of Maryland in the College of Education's Department of Counseling and Personnel Services. Falone Serna is the Vice President for Enrollment Management at Whittier College in California. And Serna brings over 15 years of experience in the field, most recently serving as Director of Admission for Seaver College at Pepperdine University. Prior to Pepperdine, he served as the Director of Admission at Reed College and has also worked in admission offices at Harvey Mudd College and the University of Laverne. So we have a whole host of experiences, schools, backgrounds with us here tonight. So we will get to all of your questions, and I'll ask you to kind of put them in the chat. We'll get to those as we go along. But I've asked each of our panelists to start, and we'll start with JT, to just kind of give us a 1 minute snapshot of their institution and to share one truth about college admission. There are a lot of myths and rumors and misinformation out there around college admission, and so I've asked them to kind of dial it down to one truth. And then we'll give 30 seconds for rebuttals. No, I'm just kidding. Wait, we're not going there. But JT, do you want to take it?
Sure, happy to do that. And I'm excited to see people from all over the country that are watching tonight and logging in. I'm glad you're here. So 1 minute about Tufts. Tufts University is awesome. It is a tier 1 research university with the heart and soul of a liberal arts college. We have about 6,000 undergraduate students and about 5,000 graduate students across 10 different professional and graduate schools. We offer over 150 different majors across our School of Arts and Sciences, our School of Engineering, and our School of the Museum of Fine Arts. We are located about 4 miles north of Boston, Massachusetts. So we are right in the middle of a major metropolitan area, surrounded by other colleges and universities. Boston is a fun college town, and Tufts is very much a part of that. Our students are known for being intellectually playful, civically engaged, outward facing, and kind. Those are the types of students that we look for in the admissions process. One truth about college admissions. There are so many outstanding colleges and universities out there that you have not heard of, that you will learn about over the next couple of months and maybe even apply to and enroll at. So keep your ears open and your mind open and look for great matches.
Great. Thank you. Zina? Oh, you're muted.
This is like the 100th time I've done something like this. You think I'd hit that button first.
You're not alone. You're not alone.
Well, good evening. It's great to be here with you and to help you think about what's next for yourselves and the questions, help you answer some of the questions you have. I'm from the University of Florida, and that is actually in Gainesville, Florida, North Central Florida, and not in Miami. The University of Florida, we have approximately 52,000 students, of which 36,000 are undergraduates. We have over 200 graduate and undergraduate majors, as well as all of the professional schools: dentistry, law, medicine, nursing, vetman, pharmacy. I may have said that twice, but we only have one college of pharmacy. And it's a really innovative place for you to come in and decide what is it that you want to do. You can pretty much come, the comprehensive nature of the University of Florida, you can come in seeking your bachelor's degree and you can leave as a doctor, an attorney, or that's just how complex and broad the opportunity is at the University of Florida. With respect to that one truth, I think I'll give you 1.5 truths. One of them, the full truth is, we read everything you send us, all of us, every single institution that you may apply to. This idea that actually you only read it if you're here or if you're there. The schools represented here all are selective institutions, and we want to know you. We really do. The number of applications that we get, it's all about coming to know you and to hear your voice. And believe me, we're pretty seasoned, so we can tell the difference between the voice of a 16 or 17-year-old and the voice of, your 35 or 40-year-old parents. So that's the absolute truth. And then the other, which is also true, but it's much more art than science. And if you add this plus this plus this, it doesn't necessarily mean in, nor does it necessarily mean out. So remember, we're going to read everything. And so keep us informed. We want to hear your voice.
Thanks, that's great. And at the College of Pharmacy, you read everything twice, right?
Exactly.
All right, thank you. Falone?
Yeah, thanks. And I'd like to also say, really happy to be here, and it's cool to see everyone from around the country. So again, Falone Serna from Whittier College. We are a liberal arts college with a student population of about 1,700, located in the city of Whittier in Southern California, which is about equal distance between downtown Los Angeles and Anaheim in Orange County, which is the home of Disneyland. So location tends to be a big draw for us for a lot of students. And we're also very proud of the fact that our student population is very reflective of the diversity that you expect to find in Southern California. We have a pretty flexible curriculum with over 30 traditional majors, 40 minors. There's a popular program called Whittier Scholars Program, which allows students to tailor their academic program around a particular career path or field of interest. So plenty of things to do academically. 65% of our students live on campus, so we're primarily residential. Hundreds of clubs and organizations, fine arts opportunities, performing arts, community service. Our athletics program competes at the NCAA Division III level with 22 men's and women's teams, which includes our 2020 national champion men's water polo team. So we're really proud of that. And I did want to share just 2 unique facts about Whittier. First one is that we have one of the more unusual mascots in the country. We're home of the Fighting Poets. So our mascot looks like this Ben Franklin looking dude. So people get a kick out of that. And second, we hold the distinction of having graduated US President Richard Nixon, class of 1934, which depending on the circles you run in may or may not have just earned me some street credit, but we're Nixon's alma mater nonetheless. In terms of my truth, it's kind of building a little bit of what Zina just shared. The college admission process is a subjective one. You know, people that attempt to crack the code of college admissions often try to reduce it to an objective process, but even the measures that are seemingly objective, like standardized test scores, are considered within the context of an individual situation. And, you know, on top of that, colleges have a variety of priorities for their incoming class that go beyond academic statistics. So, you know, I tell people to draw a parallel between the college admission process and going for a job. You know, sometimes the person with the best resume who checks all the marks is going to get hired, but sometimes a company or an office will give the nod to a less experienced candidate with better personal qualities or intangibles that they really value. So as you're kind of getting your admissions decisions back, just kind of keep that in perspective, and I think that'll help you with your setting your expectations.
That's great, thanks. And the mascot, the real irony of the mascot is what, Falone? The fighting poet. The fact that it's fighting in your school's background, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, wasn't it founded by the Quakers?
It was, yeah.
A group of pacifists. So the idea of a fighting poet is and Richard Nixon was a Quaker.
Yes, he was. Yep. Yeah. So yeah.
There you go. Learn something new every day. All right. Great. Thank you so much. For folks in the chat, please feel free to throw in some questions, what you want these folks to answer. I would love to kind of, and we've done this in some of the other webinars, but some folks are new. I'd love to just kind of get the three big questions out of the way that are on people's minds the most right now is kind of, is test optional really test optional? Maybe JT, you could take that one. Then the other question is, you know, will the amount of people who are deferring this year, you know, prevent spots for the class next year? Maybe Zina, you could take that one. And then Falone, I'd love for your thoughts on just kind of, you know, how students should write about COVID-19 and the effect of the pandemic and all that kind of stuff in the application. JT, do you want to give it a roll?
Yeah, so I'll talk about test optional. Is test optional really test optional? The short answer, yes. Yes, it is. So if a college or university has introduced a test optional policy, you should read the policy and just make sure you understand whether there's any fine print there. But the spirit of this really is that we understand that students have not had access to standardized tests in the ways in which you might have in a previous year, and that some students have registered for the test several times and had several cancellations and are still struggling to find a spot. And so colleges introduced a test optional process to accommodate for that, and the reality that many of our applicants this year just simply will not have test scores. And so you will not be disadvantaged for not having that. Now, not every university is test optional, and there are some universities that have introduced test flexible policies where they might request something in lieu of an SAT or ACT score. So one of your responsibilities is to understand what the specific testing protocol is at the places that you are applying to, and whether testing is looked at for scholarship consideration or anything else that might be of interest to you. But big picture, test optional really is test optional. And for Tufts, I actually put out a blog post last week to that effect, just underlining that we really do expect most of our applicants to not have test scores this year. And that is the reality that we expect, and students are not disadvantaged for that.
Yeah, I was actually just looking for, can you throw that in chat? Do you have it handy? The link to it?
Yep, I will look it up and throw it in the chat.
I was just looking for it because it really is a great piece. Great, thank you. Zina, can you talk a bit about what you're hearing from colleagues and what you all are seeing in terms of deferrals and that will impact class of 2021?
Absolutely. I think the deferral process is something that we all are open to, and we really want to make sure the students who want to come can come to the university. So if deferring is something that's going to be important for them to do before they arrive to our campuses, then we're definitely willing to take that under consideration. A couple of points of advice, though, that I would add. Again, look at each institution's policy on deferrals and get the necessary information about what is an accepted deferral option and what isn't. As you indicated, the spots for the next year are not finite. They're not, we'll start that sentence again. The spots for next year are limited in capacity, just like this year. However, we really want to make sure if you want to be there that you will have that opportunity to come. So not only understanding what each institution's
I think we lost Zina. I think you froze up, Zina. Oh, there you're back.
Okay. I also know about the deadlines with respect to providing that information or making that request to an institution. And then the third thing I would say is just remember that it's a request. We're going to try hard to work with you, but there may be those situations where deferral at that particular point is not going to be possible. So think it through, be prepared, know what the parameters are, know what the deadlines are, and know that we're going to try to meet your needs as best as we can.
And what I've been hearing from admissions folks kind of across the country is that they haven't seen huge increases like were expected in number of deferral requests from last year's class, and that it's not going to impact the number of spots available for next year's class.
For next year's class, exactly. That's exactly true. What many of my colleagues are saying, we didn't have huge numbers of those, and so the spaces that we have available, and you should look to see what is the typical size of the entering class, the first year class of that institution, to better understand approximately how many they may be looking for this year. But there wasn't that overwhelming number that folks are needing to reduce their class size for 21.
Great, thank you. Falone, what do you think?
COVID-19. Yeah, one thing I will get to the essay question. One thing I do want to say for those of us that are at institutions that did see a jump in deferral requests, because we certainly did, but since a lot of us, certainly the pandemic has taken a bite out of a lot of our final enrollment numbers. And so just to kind of balance things out, I definitely don't think any institution is going to be looking to withhold any spots for next year, given the climate that we're in. So I think the students and families are kind of at an advantage with respect to that. But it's interesting that I got the essay question, because my truth about admission is how this process is subjective. And while the essay is probably one of the more polarizing pieces of the application, it's also one of the most subjective aspects of an application that you're going to submit. It's really subjective to the reader and what they kind of value in an essay and all of that. So, in general, when I tell students about essay topics, stick with something that is really, the point of the essay really should be looking to show that you're able to write at the college's ability or institution's ability that you're applying to, but also, hopefully present something about yourself that may not be apparent through the rest of the application. And certainly if you want to talk about how the pandemic has impacted your life, even if that may seem like a topic that you imagine a lot of people are going to write about, if that's really what's most relevant to you in this time and space, and that's what you need to present. And just think, even though we may see 1 million COVID essays, I think my colleagues around the country at different institutions, we treat these applications with respect, especially the essays. They're your personal statements. And, you know, it may be the 100th or the 200th COVID essay that we read, but, you know, we're going to give you that genuine opportunity. And so I would say, you know, just like any topic, don't try to force it, you know, but if it really is something that has really impacted, which I imagine it has for a lot of people, then you feel like that's the most relevant thing that college needs to know about you outside of the rest of your application, then I would say go for it. Just, you know, again, for me, I'm not one that tends to get hung up on the actual story of an essay when I'm reviewing it. I just want to see that you have the ability to write. So make sure it's clean and grammar's good and all of that, and you should be all right.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a maybe this is just kind of take it to the next step. Students are wondering too, are there things they should, kind of beyond COVID, are there things they should avoid talking about in their college essay? And you know, they're always trying to kind of anticipate what admission officers want to hear, and that's not the greatest approach. They should be thinking about kind of what the story they want to tell. But I think, you know, we're living in politically charged times. You know, there's a lot going on in our nation, and I think students are sometimes worried that maybe there's some things they shouldn't talk about and some things they should avoid. Any thoughts from any of you on those things? Are there things that you would tell students to kind of steer clear of?
Since I'm still unmuted, I'll start quickly. And it just kind of goes back to what Zina was saying actually about, you know, other aspects is that, you know, really understand where you're applying to. The only thing that I would say, and not even necessarily avoid, but just be aware of, you know, all of our institutions have different, you know, codes of conduct, morals, you know, climates, and just the makeup of our community. And, you know, if you're really, you know, presenting something about yourself that's really anti to what that institution is about, it's probably not going to reflect well on you. That may not be true for every different institution that you're applying to. So, you know, as long as you're intentional about where you're applying, you'll probably know what to avoid with respect to what you write about in the essay. And if it's something that you feel you need to avoid or hide about your personal being, I would question why you're applying to that institution in the first place.
That's a great point. If you're applying to Tufts, you probably shouldn't write about large animals, like jumbo size animals, right? Other questions? I would love.
Yeah. Could I just add one thing about the essay? Is, you know, that's the opportunity to show character, to show grit, to show all of these different things. And so it's so broad what you can do with it. But we will be paying attention to it. And even in those cases where we've read something and we're concerned for a student's well-being, we have this, you know, this concern that we will likely call the school and just say, we got an essay, we're a little concerned about the well-being of a student that you might, we wouldn't reveal what we learned, but so we're paying attention, we're trying to get to know you better, we're trying to understand your voice. So there's a lot of leeway there, but like I said, you know, get to know us a little bit, and I think you'll get a sense of what, if something is out of bounds, I think you can pick that up and just getting to know us better as individual institutions.
Yeah, and I would love to, I want to come back to kind of how students can, especially some of the juniors and folks who are going to be going into this process in the next couple months, how they can start to get to know schools and get to know kind of the culture and the climate and the character of a school. But I'd love, since you kind of segued into that idea of character and a student's character, I'd love to just kind of hear from other folks. Maybe JT, you could talk a little bit about the role of character and ethical character in admission and in an application.
Yeah, happy to. So we care deeply about that as a residential community where our students are coming in and living with other students, taking classes that are small with faculty members. We care deeply about your moral compass. We care about how you envision treating other people, how you've historically treated other people. We actively look for, in our admissions process, kindness and empathy. Those are traits that matter deeply to us, and that partly comes across through collaborative skills. It comes out a little bit in your essays. We look at the main essay you write for your application, and we have 2 shorter supplemental essays that you submit on our supplement. We look at teacher recommendations to get a sense of what kind of a school citizen you are. The reason we ask for these school recommendations and writing recommendations partly is to understand how you interact with other people. Is your focus entirely inward, or are you thinking outwardly? And are you thinking about how you build bridges and bring other people along with you? Those are things that matter to us, alongside high achieving students who are going to be active and involved citizens on our campus. So it's not that we're expecting you to be perfect. And it's not that we're expecting you to always be a team player who's only an extrovert. That's not at all what we're looking for. What we're looking for are students that understand the value of working with other people to achieve greater goals. That's probably the easiest way that I can phrase that. If you come to Tufts, you will likely have a roommate. And we want to make sure that that's going to be good. And you're likely going to be in smaller classes, and we want to make sure that that's going to be good. And we're just really thoughtful about the human beings that we're inviting into this particular community. And that's common across university campuses, is making sure that the students that we invite into our spaces are students that are going to be good, active citizens.
That's great. Thank you. Anyone else want to take that one? Falone, do you want to comment on the character piece?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I don't have a lot to add to JT, because I echo a lot, being that we're a smaller community as well. It doesn't take, we don't have a whole lot of room for bad apples, and it doesn't take a lot to really change the climate and the mood of a classroom, of a residence hall. So yeah, absolutely, we care a lot about who we're introducing to the community. I think it's my office's responsibility to make sure that we're bringing in folks that our students are going to want to live with, our faculty are going to want to work with and teach. And so we definitely look for those character traits. And I will say, we're not expecting perfect people. Part of the thing about coming to college is you're going to grow, you're going to change, and if you've made some mistakes and learned from that, we'll accept you in as you are. So we're not looking for perfection, but a lot of us have done this long enough to where we know the red flags here and there, and we just try to assess that the best as we can. But character is definitely important, especially in campus communities that are residential like ours.
That's great, thanks. So let's take things from kind of the balcony view down to some of the kind of details. There's a question in the chat. Does the timing of an application have an impact on the potential outcome? Some of the examples are, for example, for University of Florida, an out-of-state student who's applying, when the timing of when they apply, does that make a difference in terms of how competitive an applicant they will be? And for other schools, that have early decision and early action, if you get an application the day before the deadline, does that make a difference compared to the student who sends it in 2 weeks early? Zina, do you want to?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Before I do that, before I answer that question, I saw it quickly pass by about Florida and Tufts optional. So if I could just address that first, I'd appreciate it. Yes. So in the state of Florida, as individual institutions, we don't have the authority to actually go test optional. It's actually written in state statute that a standardized test is required for consideration to admissions in the four-year public institutions in the state of Florida. And so there's a governing body called the Board of Governors who has the authority to make that decision. And so we've been providing them with information, but at the end of the day, they have the authority to make the final decision. But should they make that decision, we would support it fully. And we are trying to be as flexible as we possibly can with respect to the timing for the test. Our deadline for test score submission is December 15th. But if we hear from you and you say, you know, I just got into the December test, that's great. Just let us know. We're going to try to work with you and be as flexible as possible with respect to receiving that information. So, and also, you know, if you're interested in us, keep checking back, because we're working our hardest to inform the powers that be about the benefit of all the wonderful things that JT talked about for reasoning for test optional. So who knows, it may happen. And so just be sure to check that.
We know it's not for lack of trying, because there's a whole lot of people trying.
Yes, there's a whole lot of people trying. Yeah. But with respect to the question, which was about, no, we already talked about character. What was the question you asked?
The question was about kind of when the timing.
Oh, right, timing. Yes. For us, timing is not an issue so long as you meet the application deadline. Because while we may start reviewing applications, because like I said, we read every single one of them, we may start reviewing them, but the final decisions are much later down the path once we've had the opportunity to review all the applications and be able to shape what we often call shaping the class. So getting your application there early or getting your application there on the day of the deadline really isn't going to make a difference for us, because we are going to pull them and read all of them together collectively before we make final decisions.
But students, it is going to make a difference for your parents and for your counselor, who, if you wait to the last minute, are going to be ready to strangle you. So, so it might not make a difference to the college, but and JT, I don't know, it's kind of same thing for you. I know Tufts just this week announced that you're pushing your early decision deadline back 2 weeks to give students some extra time to make decisions, and which is great. But if they send in an application on November 1st, are they going to be looked at any different than sending in an application on November 13th?
No, not for us. And so we have firm deadlines that students should meet to submit their application. There's no advantage to applying earlier in terms of your likelihood of admission. I will say, I think the students that wait until the deadline or even the day before are probably more stressed out about the process. And there's always the chance that the server gets really busy as everyone's trying to hit submit on their applications on common deadline days. But there's no advantage to applying earlier for us.
Great. Thank you. So some questions coming in from Facebook, and some of it's related to some of the questions, some of the things we were talking about earlier about kind of admission being an art and not a science. Zina, as you were talking about, I think folks are really interested in how, you know, especially in the absence of test scores at some schools and things like that, and with schools going pass fail and some activities not being, people not being involved in activities, like what makes a student stand out? And Falone, maybe you could start with this one, but like what, you know, as you read an application, what makes you kind of stop and say, wow, I mean, this is a kid we want?
Yeah, I mean, I tend to think that, and again, from the perspective of having worked at, you know, private, smaller institutions that were very all mission driven and had distinctive communities. And so the students that really stood out to us were, and in my experience, were ones who really were able to demonstrate either by talking about it or just presenting themselves that they really resonated with parts of the institution, whether it was, you know, the quirkiness of Reed, or you know, the commitment to faith at a place like Pepperdine, or, you know, being at a place like Whittier, where you embrace diversity and all of that. And, you know, again, it kind of goes back to being intentional with where you apply. And if you're really intentional in choosing schools for your list that really kind of match your values and, you know, some of the things that you've done, I don't think you really need to, you know, burn a lot of calories trying to worry about fitting a mold. You just present yourself and it just comes across natural. I think the students that stand out the most are the ones that show rather than tell. And so, so those are some ways to stand out. And you know, the other thing that I would say is, you know, understand, you know, you all are not alone in going through the strains of the pandemic in these trying times. We're all going through it, and you know, I think we're all prepared to extend some grace and understanding if you're at a school that had to switch the grading system, or you're in a situation where you weren't able to take a test and, you know, you had to switch test optional, or you don't have the same activities. You know, I think we're all going to be, we're prepared to be understanding and you know, review you in your context and give you the most fair shot.
That's great. KT, Zina, anything to add to that? Just kind of in the process, things that make a student stand out?
I think Falone said it really well. I think when students have appropriate lists, it sort of naturally happens. A lot of colleges and universities ask specific essay prompts, and those are opportunities for you to really lean in to the essay prompt. And so when we ask you why you're applying to Tufts, that's your moment to tell us why this place is such a great match for you, and vice versa. So when students do that really effectively, that stands out to us. And we get really excited about students who take advantage of their resources. So students who take challenging courses that are offered at their school, students that get involved in their local communities, students that are aware of the world around them and engage in the opportunities that are available to them. Those are things that really jump out to us that we appreciate.
And I would only add that these are extraordinary times, and you know, we as a profession are, you know, operating in a new now, trying to get to a new normal, but we're not there. We're in transition. So I think it's going to be a lot of growing and learning, and the grace, extending that level of grace to our students and to ourselves as we make it through this time. So, you know, worrying about my list isn't as complete because in the spring I couldn't do this. We got you there. We understand that, you know, things just, for the next several years, not just this group that's applying this year,
Right.
you know, the freshmen, their first spring is going to look very different than we've ever seen. Just like the seniors who are starting to apply, their junior year looks very different. So I don't know that we'll get it all right this year, but we're surely going to try. And by I believe all of my colleagues are going to err on the side of understanding and grace towards applicants and what they're able to present to us this year versus, you know, this is how a typical student for us looks, and this is where we're going. I think you'll see a little mixing it up a little bit this year.
That's really well said. You know, Falone, you were saying kind of, and I really like what you're saying too about the idea of if your values match those of the school, then you know, you will stand out, right? And again, I would open this up to any of you. How can students get a really good sense of the values of a school, and what is important to what the culture of that school and the campus climate, and what are some kind of useful tips you have for students to kind of suss that out? Anyone?
Yeah, in a normal year, we'd certainly encourage to visit on campus, and While a lot of us are, and you can still take advantage of those of us who are still remote, as is the case with Whittier, you can certainly do the online things. What you lose from that is one of the key elements of visiting campus is just talking to the people that are there. I think you'll get a good sense of that. But, other aspects like looking at the mission statement of the campus, maybe looking at, most schools have like a list of events and guest speakers, see who they're bringing on campus, what kind of perspectives they're bringing, look at some of the focuses in the curriculum and see, what are they requiring students to take, what are available to them. I mean, these are some things that you can kind of see, is this going to kind of align with not only who I am socially, but what I'm trying to accomplish academically as well. But I certainly think any way you have an opportunity to visit and engage with the campus, and then talk to people who are there, and they'll kind of let you know what it's really like.
Yeah, that's a great point. And the talking to people there, I think, is you can start to get a sense, just like when you all are reading applications, and there's a lot of different voices through recommendations and through essays and things like that, you start to get a sense for an applicant and the picture that's being painted, and is it all consistent, right? Is what a student's saying in their application consistent with what the recommenders are saying about them, and so forth. Same holds true for college campuses, right? If you're talking to multiple people, maybe somebody in the admission office, and then maybe a student, or you get on and look at the student newspaper online, or you talk to a professor. If you're hearing the same messages about what they value and what's important in the kind of the campus culture, then ideally that says something, right? Any other thoughts, JT or Zina, about good ways to kind of get a good pulse on the campus? JT?
I think that's exactly right. Just remembering that no one person represents any university. So you might have the most fabulous virtual tour guide. That doesn't mean every student at that school is like that tour guide. So to Brennan's point, you do want to try to capture as many voices as possible and look for themes across however you're learning about a school. I really encourage student blogs and student newspapers. I think those are ways of hearing from students directly about what their experiences are, and just look for themes that pop up in those things. What are the campus conversations? How does the administration engage in the student conversations that are happening on campus? And just try to get a sense of the culture that way.
Yeah, and some people have suggested kind of, especially with being virtual and not being able to come to campus, just going and visiting, if there's a school you're really excited about or you think you might be interested in, just once a week, check in on their website and see what the news items are and what what kind of announcements there are, and can give you kind of a snapshot for a campus and somewhat of a feel. And also just how they're reacting to crises, right? Like COVID and like floods and fires, and how are they? How's the campus? Is it a kind of anti-racist campus, or is it not? I mean, how are they engaging with conversations around race and equity, and so I think those all should be things that students expect to learn about a school, and should be active in finding out and asking around until they do get the answers. There was another question. What role do you see for using the additional information section of for the Common App, for example? Many applications allow a student to, beyond the college essay, beyond the supplements, to add something else. And especially, as testing's not available and some of the activities and stuff, are there things that you would encourage students to put in that space? I mean, should they send a sample of a paper they've worked on or a project they've been really proud of? Should they use that space to expand on something they've done in the community. Any thoughts, Zina? Do you want to take that?
Yeah, I think probably one of the biggest mistakes in that particular area is they repeat something that already exists someplace else in the application. And so if it does exist already, but you want to put a finer point on it, then focus on that finer point and not of the whatever we already know from someplace else. So really take advantage of it to see, look through your application and say, gee, this is missing about me. And I want to make sure that they have that piece of information. Or the way that question was asked, it didn't allow me to fully express this, to go to the depth that I feel is necessary. Then take that deeper dive. But, a waste of that opportunity is to tell me something that I know someplace else, like I have always done really well in science. And that, I probably am going to be able to tell that from other information that is in there. But I've always done really well in science, and this is why it has been so significant to me and how I view myself, or how I view why college is important to me, or how you got to take that next step if you're going to point at something that's already there. But more often than not, what's missing? Tell me something about what we didn't ask you about. What's missing that would make me know you a little bit better? I think it's the way to really take advantage of that particular space.
That's great. Gentlemen, anything that you've seen that has been effective that students have used that space for? Maybe specific examples or anything else?
Yeah, I mean, my experience is that most students leave it blank. So for most students, they're not putting anything in the additional information section. I think for me, the most helpful content there is when there are like scheduling challenges. If a student couldn't take both AP Spanish and AP Calculus, they had to choose because their school only offered the classes at the same time. Or if they had mono in 10th grade and they missed a month of school because of it. So something that may not show up somewhere else in the application that a student wants to share there, that's really helpful. If there are like family context there's not a place to talk about, like some situation at home that they want to put there, they can do that. But it's generally these extra context pieces that help us understand why their curriculum looked the way it did, or why their activities stopped at a certain point. Those are the things that I find most helpful there.
Is there, besides the redundancy, are there pieces that make you roll your eyes? I mean, honestly, right? Like, are there things that people use that space for that you're like, like this is overdoing it, or that kind of thing?
There are students that do that. I mean, I always rooting for students and always want to give them the benefit of the doubt, but there are students that will copy and paste an entire resume into the additional information section when we really just want you to fill out the extracurricular activities in the community engagement section of the application that already exists. Or students that will put in a second essay there because they're applying to another university that wants a second essay. So they want to sneak in a second one. So there's things like that, and we'll read it. As Zina said, we do read everything that you submit to us, but that's not the intent of the additional information section. It's really a chance, it's a catch-all space for you to give us additional context that helps us understand your candidacy. That's
helpful. If a school really wants something like that, they'll ask for it, right? Yeah. Okay.
Brennan, I think you made a comment that, and JT alluded to it. That's one of those truths, and that is answer the questions we ask you. That they really are trying to read between the lines, or I think we're pretty straightforward. If we asked a question or we ask you to provide us with particular set of information, do that. That goes a long way to us being able to take a good look at your application. So less worrying about what do we really mean. We're pretty straightforward on the application. These are the things that we want you to tell us, and here's a space for you to tell us some things that maybe we didn't ask you about. But
And
follow the
are you
directions.
able to follow the directions? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Thanks.
that's a good point. Thanks. There's a question in the chat about, and this is a really great one, I think, about introverts in the process. So college admission in general is a pretty extroverted experience, right? It's a pretty outwardly facing experience that you're kind of, you need to do a little self-promotion, and it is kind of engaging with others in ways that for some introverts isn't in their natural way of being. Any thoughts for introverts on how they can kind of shine in this process, or how they can kind of get their voice out?
I said that goes back to the authenticity statement that we've made earlier, in being yourself and let us hear your voice. But one of the things that particularly I tell students, particularly those who perceive themselves as being introverts, is that what is it that you're passionate about, that you love to do? Have you gone deeper there? It's not about a whole laundry list of things that you did. It could be that, the piano was the end all. It was your time to be reflective and artistic and creative. And then you also taught it to younger children. And you also went to camp and you did music with children. So there's this theme there about who you are and what you value, and pull that out of yourself and give it to me, because the depth is much more fascinating and interesting than the laundry list is. So it doesn't have to be 10 items deep. It could be 3, but it's 3 that really speak to where you are and where your soul is.
That's a great point. Thank you. Okay, so we're getting close to the bewitching hour here, and I do want to end with one question for you all, and we've done this for all of our webinars, and that is, if you could go back and knowing what you know now, because as we said, as I read your bios, you've all been at a bunch of different schools and have real depth of experience in admission. And what would you tell your younger self about kind of how to move through this process, this experience? And we'll go reverse alphabetical order this time. So Falone, we'll start with you, and then Zina, and then JT.
Yeah, thanks. And I really love this question. I would say that I would try to convince, and it's tough to convince a younger person of this, but try to convince myself that your 17, 18-year-old goals and aspirations will likely change, or could likely change. I'm always impressed with young people who are very set and, kind of have things figured out, and, they stick with, being the PhD candidate from the moment they step on campus through the time they get that hood. But for many of us, things change when you grow and your interests shift, you meet different people and all of that. And so, I would just say that instead of picking a college solely based on your current interests, try to find a place I would tell myself, try to find a place that's going to inspire you to get out of your comfort zone a little bit and stretch yourself, not just socially, but also academically. Because while your undergraduate experiences are supposed to provide a good foundation and jumpstart your life as an adult, your major does not have to equal your career. And for many of us, oftentimes it does not. So I would just say to be open to that. I think back at some of my college decisions, and I made them thinking I had to go this particular path, and I probably missed out on a couple of things. So that's what I would say.
That's a great point. Thank you. Zina?
I think I would say that I wish I would have known that the decision wasn't personal. That, when I got a deny, it wasn't personal. It was about what the need of the institution is. I can understand that a lot better now, but in that moment when those letters are arriving, it feels so personal, like we didn't like you. And typically it's, we didn't have enough room for you. It has nothing to do about who you are as a student and the value you would bring to our institution. So just, being able to say, okay, that was their decision, let's move on. Not to take it personally would be what I would tell my younger self.
That's great. Yeah, it's not a judgment on your worthiness as an individual, and it's easy to feel that way. I actually think it's a good experience for every student to be denied at least one school, right? I mean, it's good to have that experience of being told no, and to expect that. Because there's so many great options out there. So thank you. Yeah, JT, what would you tell little JT Duck?
I would say focus on community and culture. Like, find your people, or the people that you want to be surrounded by and challenged by for 4 years. I think a lot of folks get really focused on name or ranking or the sports team that they see on ESPN or whatever it is, and they forget that there's a whole world of people that you're gonna be surrounded by for 4 years. I landed at a great place for undergraduate, and I loved the place that I went to, but I didn't go through the process thinking about the community and the people. That was a happy accident for me, and I think had I been even more thoughtful about that, then I would have gone in with eyes wide open for that. So I encourage you to really try to understand, like we talked about earlier, the culture, the people, the values. What do people talk about, and is this the group of people you want to be surrounded by for 4 years?
Great points. Well, thank you all. This is wonderful and really helpful, and we appreciate you taking some time out of your evening and your busy fall. We are the students who are applying to your schools are lucky to have you kind of guiding them through. So we will continue doing this series. We're doing it every other Thursday this fall. And so in 2 weeks we'll be on again, and with a new round of folks to join us. And this was recorded and will be sent out to those who registered. So thank you again. Have a great evening. Enjoy the rest of your fall. Be well and stay well.